Welcome back to the 235th episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through some of the top stories, including the mistakes Republicans made before the State of the Union, the article about a ad that CNN wouldn't run before or during the State of the Union, as well as a breakdown of one of the big characters of the State of the Union that wasn't Joe Biden himself. And of course, we will end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump in to our daily debate. I want to hear about your opinions, your presuppositions about how the State of the Union was going to go. If you're on one side of the aisle, you thought it was going to be pretty darn bad. If you were on the other side of the aisle, you probably think it was going to be okay, if with maybe a few little stumbles here or there. There are lots of different opinions about how it was going to go down. Of course, myself going into it, I was like, oh, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried that things aren't going to go too great for Mr. Biden. And when I say worried, I mean I was probably going to laugh along with the flubs and watch the videos afterwards that got all of them into one giant compilation. But it was one of those things where, hey, if we can just laugh about the downfall of our president and his not so good mental state, then we might as well enjoy the small things while we can. But hey, I was proven wrong. Let's be clear. There were some stubs, there were some flubs, but it wasn't nearly what a lot of people thought it was going to be. But we can get into all of that once we jump to our first article, so let's do that. This one comes from Raw Story, and the headline reads, Republicans made a mistake. Pollster identifies GOP's biggest blunder on Biden's State of the Union. So when I first read that headline, I was like, ooh, okay, so are they going to say what I thought they were going to say? You know, because when I first hear that, the thing that comes to mind for me with Republicans is they were building it up. They were saying, oh, it's going to be absolutely terrible. He's going to mess up everything, blah, 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 blah. And to be honest, the expectations were set really, really high. And hey, I fell into that myself because I listened to news from a whole bunch of different sides, and even the progressive-ish side that comes from things like Crystal Ball. She said, hey, he's an old man. She didn't necessarily say that he's going to do awful, but she did mention the fact that his age could have an effect on it. So even then, the idea that he could mess up, that he was going to mess up like he has done in previous speeches, was definitely high. So if anybody came in with that presupposition, that idea that, okay, it may not go great for Mr. Biden, there's going to be a few mess ups, or there's going to be a good amount of mess ups, then yeah, they had pretty high expectations for his failure, and that does not look good for Republicans when they got what they got. Sure, was he not necessarily the most clear while speaking, enunciating every single word? If you notice there, I enunciated every single word a little bit more. Did he not do that? Sure. Did he make one or two big mistakes, especially with Lake and Riley? Yes, he did. But it wasn't the absolute disaster that people thought it was going to be. So that didn't really play into the Republican narrative. So when I read that headline, that's exactly what I thought. And guess what? That is basically what they took away from it as well. Quote, last night, and this is a quote from the article from another quote of a different person, so we'll get to that, but just keep that in mind. Quote, last night, what he said was for the Democratic base, Longwell explained, but how he said it was for the swing voters who needed to see that this guy was all there and that he could do the job. And I told you yesterday when I was on the show, the Republicans have made a mistake because they set the bar at dementia. Longwell said that the sharpness of Biden's address easily cleared that bar, and added that if that's what dementia looks like, then I hope that's how I have dementia when I'm older, because he's on his game. Now, on his game. No, he's nowhere close to where he was before. Whether you don't like Joe Biden or not, he's been able to put together some good sentences, some good little zingers, be politically astute. And I think one of the best moments was when he was doing his call and response, which seems to be a normal practice at State of the Unions nowadays. And he was talking with the Republicans in the audience. And this was the very first instance, or at least the first instance that I remember, which was when he was talking about the tax cut, the $2 trillion tax cut. And the Republicans, they go up and they say some, or I say they go up and say, they stand up and they make a little ruckus, and he goes, oh, so you don't want to give the millionaires and billionaires another $2 trillion tax cut. I thought that was the plan. Well, that's good to hear. Rather than responding like he did last time with Social Security and say, oh, okay, so you don't want to cut, and it made it look politically disadvantageous for him last time they did this call and response. This time, he turned it on its head, and let's be clear, he did the same thing last time, but he was wrong. Because at the end of the day, a lot of Republicans don't, at least nowadays, a lot of Republicans don't want to actually cut Social Security. They started to realize it's very politically disadvantageous. Only people who are part of like maybe the Tea Party or the real hardline budget hawks are the ones that are trying to get rid of it. But I'm almost 100% certain that a lot of people that are Republican do want to actually have another tax cut. So he's hitting them on a politically salient issue that is also true and can't just be debunked by people who are commentators. No, because they do want to bring in another tax cut. Now, is it just for the trillionaire or the millionaires and billionaires like Biden's saying? No, it would still be a tax cut for everybody, but at least it's a honest statement in that they do want to actually do this. So I think that was a good move on his part, and things like that. There weren't many of them. There was one other one, I believe, with the border bill that was a little bit more snooty than the tax cut one, which at the end of the day, I don't think will play as well for him. But my point being, there were still moments where he's not just standing there yelling at the crowd, which is what some Republicans are saying. He's actually taking call and response. He's trying to really mellow down the tone and talk to the people in the room rather than just play on the rhetoric that he wrote out beforehand, which shows some salience in his presence in the room. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people came in with the wrong misconception that this is going to be an end-all be-all problem. And when it doesn't turn out that way, when the narrative is constantly, oh, this is going to be an issue for Biden, he's going to flub the entire thing. Sure, you can pull out the one or two moments he did flub something. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't want a president to flub anything. I would want them to be able to have a coherent 1 hour and 40-minute speech. Guess what? Trump messed up a few things and he went off script in certain places where he had to kind of make it look like he was recovering. I don't remember most of Biden's State of the Unions Obama's State of the Unions while I was younger, mainly because I didn't care at that point, but I have no doubt that he made it through most of them without a lot of issues, because, it's Obama. He's eloquent, he's cool, he's calm, he's collected, so on and so forth. So yes, in an ideal world, we get no flubs, but when you set the bar so high, just like they mentioned here, when you set the bar at dementia, and not just like, a little bit of dementia here and there, but when you set it at the whole thing is going to be dementia, it's not going to turn out well for you politically. And he spoke to his base like they were talking about here in this article. And I've had conversations with some of the people that I'm very close with. And I said, this is his turnaround moment. He had been really bogged down by some of his previous flukes, especially the press conference after the case was not dropped, but they said they weren't going to pursue it because he's an elderly old man who would be very, what's the word I'm looking for? He would present himself well as a kindly old person in front of a jury that was trying to convict him on misplacing the documents. And if he can't get convicted, they're not going to bring it. That was the whole point of Hur's judgment in the the briefing of the case, which is, hey, we're not going to bring it because we don't think we could actually get charges because he is a person who would appear as though he's older and he can easily misplace documents, so we don't think we can actually seal the deal on this one. That's why that it wasn't brought. It's not that, oh, he's the president and we can't bring it against him, and that's why the whole argument of him being how should I say, forgetful or being a little bit out of sorts sometimes. That's why that argument's important, because they don't think they could actually get it through a jury in order to convict him. And that's why they didn't pursue that line when they were making the recommendations to actually say, okay, hey, we're going to take this to court or not. And then he messed up the press conference. So you see how that was literally playing into the idea that, yeah, he's an old man who makes mistakes and has memory issues because he couldn't remember when he got the rosary from Hunter Biden. That politically was terrible. The imaging, the messaging was absolutely terrible, and it plays into the exact fact that he's trying to refute. But now, when you set the bar so high, when you're rolling off of that, and you set the bar so high, oh, hey, he's going to mess it up, and then he does relatively okay. He hits on some salient talking points for the middle-class voter, the swing voter. And then he also plays to his base by constantly trying to call out Republicans. I think this is the restart of his campaign. The Republicans joked, hey, this is going to be a reset. It's going to be Biden's reset. No, and they always said, it's not actually going to be his reset. He's not going to be able to reset jack squat. And I'm not saying it's a full reset. There's definitely still things that he needs to improve on going forward. But for the person who is not a politico, now that Trump has got locked in, we are in general election mode. And this might be the first thing that people are starting to watch going into this electoral season. For the people that are just joining now, he's probably convinced them a little bit more. For the people who have been here for a little bit and they've saw some of his previous mistakes, this could be a moment where they're like, okay, this is the Biden I want to see. I want to see him out on the campaign trail like this. Anybody who's been in this process for more than a year at this point, for anyone who's been following it since Trump got in a year and a half ago, which is really early, by the way, their opinions are probably pretty locked in, but that's maybe 1-2% of the population. Everybody else doesn't really care. If you're listening to this podcast and you've made it this far in, either I'm really fascinating today and you really like my voice, which I highly doubt is the case, or you're somebody who actually cares about these issues and you care about this part of the governance process. And we're weird. We're weird. The fact that I do a podcast on it, the fact that you're listening to said podcast on it, yeah, we're weird. We love politics. We love the commentary. But at the end of the day, that's not us. So it's going to resonate. It's going to resonate. I promise you that much. And the funny thing is, when I talk to some people, they were like, oh, yeah, I didn't actually watch the State of the Union, but I did just see some of the videos or the TikToks afterwards of him messing up. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. Those are going to play well for a certain base. But anyone who actually took on the State of the Union, who watched the whole thing, then again, let's be clear, the people who would actually watch the entire thing are also a little bit more politically engaged. I put them at like the 10% mark. But those are also the people that you're trying to play for, the swing voters who care enough to be informed and actually go out there and vote. They're informed enough, let's put it that way, to be willing to vote for one side or the other because they understand the issues at hand that affect them. And they have to actually be engaged in the political process in order to know whether they're voting on one side or the other. If you always vote Republican or you always vote Democrat, no offense, you don't need to be as politically informed. If you know for the most part that they're always going to follow your ideological bend, then you can just vote them no matter what. It's the swing voters who have to be a little bit more informed and say, well, this one policy by Biden, I don't like his tariffs that he's putting on China or restrictions for the chip industry that could adversely affect my business, versus somebody who would say, Yeah, I don't like that. But also Trump's, there's steel tariffs, so that could also adversely affect my industry. So those people have to be very politically informed and understand what each president is going to do, why they're going to do it, and how it will affect their businesses going forward, or even not just their businesses, but their lives. I mean, if you have a swing voter who the main issue they care about is having better policies that enable them to have their children and raise them, then they're going to do a deep dive on both of the people's education policies. And people like that could very well be swayed by what Biden was talking about a lot last night. He was trying to talk about, I don't want to say necessarily kitchen table issues, but he was definitely trying to talk about some of those issues that are really appealing to people in the middle class. And let's be clear, if you give it more than 10 minutes of thought, you're going to say, well, some of these things aren't actually going to help the way that he says they will. There are other policies that I think could be good in there. Some of them resonated with me. I was like, okay, interesting. I don't really have a crazy leaning on this one or the other. I hear where you're coming from. I think there might be a better solution, but I don't hear anybody else necessarily talking about how to solve it. They're just talking about it as an issue. So maybe we could hear it out. And if I, as someone who definitely leans a little bit more one way than the other, if I can at least hear that and understand the argument and try to at least give him the benefit of the doubt, there are other people out there who are definitely listening and saying, yeah, hey, I like what he's saying. So at the end of the day, the Republicans, they messed up. They messed up because no matter how many TikTok clips you get, for the people who are actually out there going to vote, the young people, no offense, they don't vote as much as the older population who would actually sit down and watch the entire State of the Union. And those are the people that Biden was talking to the other night. And he did a relatively okay job. Not saying he did the best job in the world, not saying he did a terrible job. He did a relatively okay job. It did the job. It checks a box. So at the end of the day, Republicans, you set the bar a little bit too high. I said that going in as well. Let's be clear. I fell into it. I said, I texted a person really important to me. I said, it's going to be funny with all the TikToks of him messing up the day before. But I also, before the whole thing started, I said, maybe the bar is a little bit too high. Because I was walking, and I literally just had it playing in my... that was annoying that they had to make it go. They had to start it late because of the protest out in the street on Pennsylvania Avenue. I listened to the entire thing. I watched some sections I had to go back through because there was a ruckus and I wanted to see what was going on. But yeah, I did think that from the beginning, even though I thought there were going to be some funny videos, I did question whether or not the bar was set a little bit too high, because all it takes is the right cocktail and he could be good for those 2 hours. So what is the next article that we want to talk about? Well, it comes from National Review, and the headline reads, "They won't even hashtag say her name. CNN refuses to air State of the Union ad blaming Biden for the murder of Laken Riley." And when I heard this one, I was very, very interested because they were trying to press this really, really hard. Also, I find it interesting that someone would watch the State of the Union on like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, watch it on C-SPAN. Especially nowadays, if you're young, put it on C-SPAN on YouTube. You get a few ads here or there. It's just supposed to be basically no reporting. It's just boom, put it up there. You watch the live stream. I find it odd that these channels are running it, but then again, I get it. They got to make their money somehow, and some people are accustomed to watching Fox News and MSNBC, CNN. So I do understand. It's just, I was like, come on, just watch the one that's not going to give you their biased opinion before or after. Then again, C-SPAN, they probably did have some coverage beforehand that I just didn't care about and didn't watch. But let's jump to the actual information in this article. Quote, "Building America's Future" said Friday that major media networks, including Fox News, MSNBC, and Newsmax, all accepted the ad, while CNN ultimately rejected it. Quote, "CNN and Joe Biden are in lockstep once again. They won't even hashtag say her name," Build America's Future advisor Phil Cox said in a statement provided to National Review. Quote, it is shameful that CNN is censoring the truth and trying to protect President Biden by refusing to air this ad. So you hear this and you're like, okay, whoa, they're protecting Joe Biden. That's a really bold claim. What's going on here? Why did CNN actually reject this ad? Because if they have a reasoning which is, no, we just think it's politically disadvantageous to Biden, then that's one thing. But if they say there's another reason and it's 100% legitimate, then maybe we need to reevaluate our criticism here. So, quote, in response to National Review's request for comments, the CNN spokesperson confirmed that the ad failed to meet the network's commercial clearance guidelines and policies because its claims were unsubstantiated. So, hey, I'm just going to be honest. They must have a really, really high bar, because if MSNBC and Fox News are running it, I was going to say Newsmax, but yeah, no offense to Newsmax, but their bar is not that high. They're going to take the money they can get because they are a smaller network compared to the other ones. But still, MSNBC is I don't want to say they're a friend to Biden, but they're definitely a friend to Democrats. So to pretend as though that if MSNBC and Fox News are willing to take it on and CNN is not, based on unsubstantiated claims, they must have a really high bar. And you know what? That is very honorable of them. I absolutely respect their decision. Also, it is a free market. So guess what? They don't have to take your money. They don't have to air the ad. So just because Building America's Future wants to put it out there doesn't mean they absolutely have to. But I do find it absolutely hilarious that CNN doesn't want to run this ad. If whatever the reasoning is, if it's because it's unsubstantiated claims, well, it's probably, we know the narrative behind it. We know the narrative behind the Lake and Riley story, which is a undocumented immigrant, an illegal immigrant, whichever way you want to put it, killed her while she was on a run. We know the narrative behind that, and CNN doesn't want to run something that blames something on undocumented immigrants. We know they're biased already, and they also don't want to run it when it could potentially hurt Joe Biden. That's my assumption, okay? Both of those are my assumptions. Maybe it really is deep down that they believe that these claims are not 100% substantiated, and we're not going to air that on our news station. It just happens to be convenient, and let's be clear, I am completely admitting, yes, it just happens to be convenient that both of the things I mentioned before happen to be true. They don't want to call out anything wrong with possible undocumented immigrants because they don't want to ascribe hate and malice to that segment of the population that is now within the United States. And that's also me assuming their motives there. But if I had to give it my best guess and be genuine and not try to be malicious, that's what I would say, as well as they probably want Mr. Joe Biden to continue to be president. But then again, I don't know, maybe that one's wrong, because they do like them some Trump. Their ratings were really good under Trump. So maybe they want Trumpy boy back in there. I don't know. Then again, would they not run this ad if they did? Maybe. So it's a very, very interesting one for sure. And also, they're turning down $700,000 in ad buy money. That's absolutely insane. I don't know if that's dispersed across all the networks or if that is just what they were trying to pay for CNN in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. But still, that is absolutely crazy in my opinion. But there is one other part of this article that I wanted to read for you. The ad buy included a separate ad, which highlighted the dangers of a $340 billion healthcare program for illegal immigrants. However, the conservative nonprofit did not publicly note whether the second ad was included in the offer by CNN. So you can see this is ad warfare. And I'm not saying warfare is terrible. This is an apt description of what it is. Yeah, this is ad warfare. They're coming after Biden, especially when the stage is supposed to be his, and they're trying to call him out just like any other attack ad would. So this is what happens. We're in the general now, and Biden's going to be under attack more and more and more now that the playing field is more evenly divided. And also now they have a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a little bit more understanding of how they should attack Biden, because as we get closer within the year, we can kind of filter out the policies that most people have a problem with, and we can distill them into messages now. The political firms have had enough time to really look through everything that's going on, all the issues that people care about, and now they also have Trump on the other side, so they know exactly who they can, what's the word I'm looking for, present as a clash or a contrast to Joe Biden. Because if Nikki Haley's there, then guess what? They're going to push the age issue very, very hard, because that's the contrast that they're trying to create and the difference between the candidates they're trying to create. Now, on border policy, if it's Trump, they're probably going to go more border policy. And they're probably going to go more border policy anyway, because the Republicans are going to be more strict on it. But you can push that even harder, because Trump was definitely a illegal immigration. And I'm not saying Joe Biden's pro illegal immigration, but if you had to throw it into categories, Donald Trump dislikes illegal immigration more than Joe Biden does. And Trump did more than Joe Biden did to stop illegal immigration. So you can draw that contrast now that we're in that general atmosphere where there's nobody else that can challenge Trump. There's not even a hint. There's not even an inkling. It is Trump v. Biden, end all be all. So that's why these ads are coming out now. And also they're trying to ruin his night, which was the State of the Union. So then again, oh, that stuff you could have figured out yourself. That's pretty darn common sense. But I just thought it was a very interesting article, and I wanted to call out CNN for that, because at the end of the day, it is their prerogative to not take ads. But also, are you really going to boost your reputation by not taking ads from the other side? No, you're just going to look more like a partisan network. So, and that's not necessarily what you want to be when you're a news agency, especially when you're trying to rebuild your brand. So our next article comes from the Daily Beast, the Republican rep who keeps saying the quiet part out loud. And this is one of our friends from Texas, and his name is Mr. Niels, or House Representative Troy Niels, I believe is how you properly pronounce his name. So if you had seen the State of the Union or any videos that came out of it, he was the gentleman in a suit jacket with a mugshot Trump shirt underneath and an American bow tie with no collar. And he looked like a professional clown. I'm sorry. I don't care how much theater you want to do. I don't care if you're wearing an all red trucker MAGA outfit costume. I don't care if you're the Women's Caucus and you want to wear all white. All these performative gags and shows, they're stupid. Yeah, we all know that you're going to be on TV. We know that you know you're going to be on TV, and that's why you have to differentiate yourself. Or the gentleman on the other side of the aisle wearing a Ukraine flag, or Bernie Sanders not wearing a mask before the State of the Union starts, and then when the State of the Union starts, he puts on a mask. Whether or not that's because he started coughing, or whether that's because he's trying to send a political message, I don't know. I think if it was actually because he was coughing, then I think he would have had the mask on before the State of the Union started, but I honestly don't know. That could be me ascribing things in a wrong word manner. But my point being, all these different people are doing their little, how should I say? I don't want to say virtue signaling, but their party, their line signaling, like, oh yeah, look at me. I'm wearing my all Trump MAGA red gear. I'm wearing my America bow tie with my Donald Trump t-shirt underneath. This is just like the issue of John Fetterman and wearing sweatpants and things into the Senate. Come on, guys, be professional. Wear a suit and tie, wear a dress, wear a business blazer for women, whatever the proper decorum is. Wear it, sit down, get over yourselves, and just keep on going. This is, unfortunately, whether or not you like the State of the Union, this is the president's night to talk to you guys. This is not your night to make a ruckus. It's not your night to get all the attention, but that's not how politics works, of course. I'm not naive. I understand they think that they can get news stories out of it, which this gentleman, Mr. Troy Niels, obviously did. Now I am talking about it, but I'm not talking about it to say, oh yeah, look at him. Oh yeah, he's so cool. Or, oh no, he's so bad. Why would he do that? I'm not talking about him specifically. Using him as an example to talk about the broader House culture, which is get over yourselves, you egotistical maniacs. Get back to governing the country properly. And if you're not going to do it and you're just going to continue to virtue signal to your base, great. Hopefully they will put you back in, and guess what? They chose you as their representative. Good for them. But maybe maybe we as a entire nation should call out that person and try to have more, how should I put it, strict rules on how to act when you are in one of the most sacred bodies in this nation. And no, yes, I know, sacred bodies, elevating it to a religious status. I understand how that can also be problematic. But how about we just have common respect for the nation that has provided safety for all of us and provided us the abilities to live in a prosperous way? How about we have respect for that rather than going around like little jokers wearing America bow ties and having a glaring picture of Donald Trump on our chest because we're trying to make a political point? But no, it will never happen because we love our little dramas. We love our little TV shows, our soap operas. And when our politicians start playing out the soap opera IRL, for some reason we love it even more. So let's jump to our final article. We're going to end on something a lot more cheerful than my last little rant, which is a video that comes from Parade Pets. Hilarious video of pups Roomba rodeo goes viral and proves she's a total cowgirl at heart. And I'll tell you now, this is an adorable, adorable video. Quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Shanti, the Roomba rodeo queen, and step right up to see her incredible talented rodeo skills courtesy of a self-cleaning vacuum in a cute cowgirl hat." The fact that she balances on this thing is honestly impressive. If my dog had done that back in the day, I would have been ecstatic. I would have loved it. Then again, we didn't have Roomba, but the point being, it's really cool. And if you want to check out this video or you want to check out any of today's articles, there'll be a link in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the link to the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Podcast, as well as Podvine. With all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.